The thing that blocks our intuition is often not what we think it is. We think it's a noisy mind, or we think it is our ego, or we think it's a lack of skill. But if you've ever bumped into your intuition, that little inner voice that has nudged you, if you've ever said, "Thank you, inner voice," and if you've ever said, "I wish I had followed my intuition, my gut instinct, my inner voice," then you know that it is possible to gain insight, to gain inner guidance. But why can't we get that when we need it the most? What's in the way? The surprising thing that surprised me, and it really surprises many of the guides, the coaches, the healers, the seekers that I work with every day and train and mentor, is that it's all about attention. Because wherever our attention is, that's what we're tuned into. And this is no small thing, because what we're tuned into literally determines the experience that is being felt in our nervous systems. Just like changing radio stations, tuning into different music. If you listen to one song, your nervous system responds differently to another song. Intuitively, it is exactly the same when we are putting attention randomly in different spaces and places on different types of content. We don't know often that that's exactly what's determining what we are tuned into and what we are not. And this is why when we are stressed, when we are struggling, when we're suffering, it's often the most difficult to use our inner wisdom well, to send that bucket inwards, and to get those intuitive aha moments and insights when we desperately need them. Why? Because in that moment, our attention is being hijacked and owned by the loudest thing in the nervous system, which is usually pain of some kind, right? Emotional pain, physical pain, or the thing that we are most interested in, or the thing that is grabbing the microphone within us. So forgive me for the many different metaphors that you will hear from me. I learned this from a very, very young age. And training my intuition has become one of the most important, if not the most important skill that I have developed. And it's helped me to overcome shyness, to build businesses, to hopefully be, let's say, a better human being, and even to build my wisdom well. Attention is something worth paying attention to if you are interested in unblocking your intuition. So that when we need our intuition, when we need to send a bucket into our wisdom well, that we can, and that we don't end up dragging our buckets through the sand. So firstly, what is attention? Attention is not seeing or hearing or tasting. Those are senses. Notice. You don't have to believe anything I have to say. Notice for yourself. I'd prefer that you see things for yourself. And these are skills that we can all develop. So the attention, notice, is something you can move between the senses. And how do we do that? We make a decision. We decide, I would like to focus my attention on sight. And then suddenly everything you're seeing comes into clearer focus, more data, more information's available. Or you pay more attention to hearing. If there was a loud noise, attention would naturally go to hearing, and you would be wired, survival programming wired, to notice that. So attention is being pushed and pulled around all day. How often in a day do you consciously choose to change what attention is on. Most of us aren't consciously working with attention. It is just moving between the different objects of awareness, between different content. First to this thought that is loud and demanding, then to this emotion, then to this sensation. So this attention is moving around, changing what we're tuned into. And most of the time we're not aware of the fact that wherever attention is, we've already started tuning in, whether we know it or not. This is why when you think of someone, sometimes randomly, synchronistically, if you're paying attention to attention, if you're noticing, something could change. And sometimes you may realize, need to phone that person, something's wrong. Has that ever happened to you, that you've thought of someone and something unsettled you, or there was a little bit of an upset feeling because you started thinking, there was a nudge, something's not okay, as if the song of that person suddenly became available to you. Now, this is non-local communication. This is the fact that, and this is not a fact for you until you've discovered it, as I have through many decades of pushing this and testing it, that it is possible to set an intention, which is a silent decision, and have attention placed where we want it to be instead of randomly. So attention is prior to the senses, and it is something you can guide with the second teaching here, intention, the decision. Now, intention is guided by interest, guided by sincerity. We pay attention to what we're interested in. We pay attention to what we care about. Attention is not going to be free for you to move to what you want to tune into if it is only being owned by a distressed nervous system, by the loudest, most dominant thought, which is often why we can access our intuition when we are quiet, when we are more peaceful, in those random moments that you don't expect to have your aha moments arrive. So the reason for so many different ways that we can use to be centered, more grounded, to regulate our nervous systems, the reason we want to do that, the mechanics behind it, is actually because we want to free attention from its survival programming. We want to be able to move attention at will instead of it being locked and loaded into the loudest, dominant, most urgent thing that our survival programming and that our nervous system is demanding of us. But it is possible, once we know this and once we start working with this, that even in very distressed, very difficult situations, if we know this, we can support our nervous systems, and even if we can lower that stress threshold by 20%, by 30%, then it is possible to unlock attention. And the moment we've unlocked attention and freed it from being zoned in on the most dominant thought or the loudest thing in our minds and in our hearts and in our bodies, we can get a whisper, we can get a contrast, we can send the bucket lower than the surface mind. And that's when the quality of what we start to tune into changes. And this is the second main point I wanted to share with you today. So the first thing that is often in the way of our intuition is that we're not conscious about attention and we don't know how to move attention at will. And the second big thing is that because what we're tuning into when we're tuning into inner guidance, wisdom, is qualitatively different to the surface mind, to the survival programming, we often miss it. We call it a soft, gentle inner voice for a reason, because we notice that it's different. In all the decades that I've taught this, and I've been teaching intuition since the age of 17, when two women who were 20 years older than me asked me to teach them, and I said, no, I'm 17, and they said, please. So I said, okay. And I spent a school holiday teaching these two women, totally overcompensating, mind you, but that was the beginning. And even from then, and all these decades in between, whenever I ask students to tell me what the difference is between an intuitive thought and the chattering daily ramble sports commentator of the mind, they will use words like knowing. It's quieter, it's felt, it's solid. There is a felt somatic of the body quality to intuition. And this is the second thing that gets in the way of our intuition and our ability to access this at will, is that if we don't know that there is quite a difference between having attention on the surface mind, having attention on daily chatter versus deeper inner wisdom, we struggle to even notice that we are busy tuned in. You might be tuned in and you don't even know you're tuned in. That's number one. And number two is because it's very different, there's a need to translate, which isn't there in the surface mind. The surface mind, the surface feelings don't need translating, but intuition does. So the first surprising thing to get in the way of our ability to access inner guidance and intuition when we need it is we don't know enough about attention, and we're not paying attention to attention. And number two is we don't realize that when we are tuning in, that there is a fundamental difference between what surface data information is versus depth. And the depth, of course, is our wisdom, our inner guidance, and that therefore there is a need to translate. So folks get quite stuck here. One of the common things I've heard is that someone will actually calm their nervous system down, a couple of breaths, so many beautiful ways these days to just take a minute or two to regulate your own nervous system, to settle it so that you feel more open, so that you feel more relaxed, literally as simple as that. And then the moment they do that and they set their attention, intention, directing attention, wanting wisdom, wanting inner guidance, not knowing that the bucket has actually now moved, that attention has actually technically started resting in a deeper self, in the truer self. So therefore, the music, let's say, that is starting to play through your nervous system has changed. And so they will describe, but Cole, I'm getting nothing. Okay, nothing. And as if they're waiting for words, waiting for this epiphany. And then there's nothing. So the first thing I always ask is, what kind of nothing is nothing? Is it closed, heavy nothing? Or is it open, expanded nothing? Now, if we've regulated the nervous system a bit, if we've calmed down a little bit, most of the time this is going to be an open nothing, a peaceful nothing. And I always say, well, that's not nothing. If it's a closed nothing, that is also not a nothing to dismiss. That is still something. So the first thing we want to look for here is closed and open, which if you followed any of my trainings and any of my teachings, you know that this is a primary insight to developing your intuitive skills, to accessing inner wisdom. It's also a coaching method that I teach through my inner life skills programs. So closed and open. So the first things to notice is that wisdom will always open you. How you know you are in depth and not surface, how you know you're not tuned into ego or imagination or anything from the surface mind is that there is more openness. So if the nothing feels open, it's not nothing, it is something. And now it's about translating. Then we need to understand that what translating means at this level is being willing to turn silence into words, because intuition is the language before all languages, and developing the skill of intuition is remembering the language we spoke before all languages. So the translating skill is the leap from knowing into language, from clear seeing, which is prior to words, into words. And we do this admitting that the translation is always fallible, that words are always limited, they're always a compromise. We are never, this is what wisdom has showed me, that it is unwise to take the words literally, because it's never about the words. The words are the translation of clear seeing and clear being. If I could spell correctly, that would help. There we go. Clear seeing and clear being. The moment we are seeing true and being true, true I and true I, true perception as pure awareness, there are no words. That's why it feels like open, 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 open. Your sense of body disappears. Your edges feel like they're soft or gone. And then it's like, well, cold, there are no words, or the words are very minimal. Then we want to be patient. Then we want to set attention and intention to find the good enough words. If this feeling was a word, if the seeing became words, what could it be? And to allow words to come to us. I always say, let myself know. And I say to clients, let yourself know. Let yourself know. When we get attached to words, when we try to trust the words, we set ourselves up for self-delusion. We drop our discernment. It's not the words, folks. Is the word apple tree the actual apple tree? If I see an apple tree and I slap the sticky note on it, apple tree, and then I focus only on the words, the label, I've missed the song of the tree itself. We are missing the songs of life. The whole universe is singing to us, but it's not singing in English. This is the language before all language. This is our mother tongue. Intuition at its highest form, I believe, can be to remember who we truly are and see for ourselves. Self-realization in a non-Hollywood way. True seeing, true being. And that to discover that wisdom is not knowledge. That wisdom is that open moment of seeing clearly. So what blocks our natural intuition is not that we don't have intuition in that moment. Just like, if you have the capacity to see, if we have eyeballs that work, and if we have seeing as a function, no one has to teach us to see, But we learn. When I put attention there, I see that. When I put attention there, I see that. We learn how to translate what we are seeing. Oh, I give a label to that. I give a label to that. So this mother tongue of intuition, this inner guidance is already there. But if you don't know that where attention is what you're tuned into, you could be missing it all. and not able to pull attention away from and towards that which you are most interested in, that which is beyond fear and survival programming. And knowing that when you tune in to wisdom, intuition, when you are seeing for yourself as your true self, true eyes, true seeing, and true being, that the quality, the way your nervous system responds to that is significantly different to when attention is locked into only nervous system survival, demanding radio stations and songs. That it is subtler. You will feel more open than closed. And that the leap to words is a leap. It is a function of translating. And that the seeing is more important than the words, but it is really helpful to get words or insight or understanding, because that's how we bring the bucket full of water to the surface and change what it means to feel human. That inspires me. Does it inspire you? If this kind of deep, immersive content around tuning in and learning to sharpen your skills for yourself and for those you serve, if you are a guide, a coach, a healer, then let the algorithm know, let me know, because I'm also guided by what is needed and what is being called for. So hit subscribe, pop some comments my way, and I'll know to make more of this kind of content.